Fire's getting nice and toasty. Had to take the jacket off. Our next chapter is Take Your Seats, Everyone. Jack and I walked right behind a couple of sixth graders into the building and then followed them into the auditorium. Mrs. G was at the entrance, handing out the programs and telling kids where to go. Fifth graders down the aisle to the left, she said. Sixth graders go to the right. Everyone come in, come in. Good morning. Go to your staging areas. Fifth graders to the left, sixth graders to the right. The auditorium was huge inside. Big sparkly chandeliers, red velvet walls, rows and rows and rows of cushioned seats leading up to the giant stage. We walked down the wide aisle and followed the signs to the fifth grade staging area, which was in the big room to the left of the stage. Inside were 4 rows of folding chairs facing the front of the room, which is where Miss Rubin was standing, waving at us as soon as we walked in. Okay, kids, take your seats, she was saying, pointing to the rows of chairs. Don't forget, you're sitting alphabetically. Come over, everybody, take your seats. Not too many kids had arrived yet, though, and the ones who had weren't listening to her. Me and Jack were sword fighting with our rolled-up programs. Hey, guys. It was Summer walking over to us. She was wearing a light pink dress and, I think, a little makeup. Wow, Summer, you look awesome, I told her, because she really did. Really? Thanks. You do too, Augie. Yeah, you look okay, Summer, Jack said, kind of matter-of-factly. And for the first time I realized that Jack had a crush on her. This is so exciting, isn't it? Said Summer. Yeah, kind of, I answered, nodding. Oh man, look at this program, said Jack, scratching his forehead. We're going to be here all freaking day. I looked at the program. Headmaster opening remarks, Dr. Harold Jansen. Middle school director's address, Mr. Lawrence Tushman. Light and Day, middle school choir. 5th grade commencement address, Zimina Chin. Paco Bell Canon in D. Middle school chamber music ensemble. 6th grade student commencement address, Mark Antoniak. Under pressure, middle school choir. Middle school dean address, Miss Jennifer Rubin. Awards presentation, see back. Roll call of names. Why do you think that? I asked. Because Mr. Jansen's speeches go on forever, said Jack. He's even worse than Tushman. My mom said she actually dozed off when he spoke last year, Summer added. What's the awards presentation? I asked. That's where they give medals to the biggest brainiacs, Jack answered, which would mean Charlotte and Zimina will win everything in the 5th grade, like Charlotte won everything in the 4th grade. And in the 3rd grade. Not in the 2nd grade? I laughed. They didn't give those awards out in the 2nd grade. Maybe you'll win this year, I joked. Not unless they're giving awards for the most C's, he laughed. Everybody take your seats. Miss Rubin started yelling louder now, like she was getting annoyed that nobody was listening to her. You're sitting in alphabetical order. A through G is the first row, H through N is the second row, O through Q is the third row, R through Z is the last row. Let's go, people. We should go sit down, said Summer, walking toward the front section. Hey, you guys are definitely coming over to my house after this, right? I called out. Definitely, she said, taking her seat next to Zimina Chin. When did Summer get so hot? Jack muttered in my ear. Shut up, dude, I said, laughing as we headed toward the 3rd row. Seriously, when did that happen? He whispered, taking the seat next to mine. Mr. Will, Miss Rubin shouted. Last I checked, W came in between R and Z, yes? Jack looked blankly at her. Dude, you're in the wrong row, I said. I am? And the face he made when he got up to leave, which was a mixture of looking completely confused and looking like he just played a joke on someone, totally cracked me up. Our next chapter is A Simple Thing. About an hour later, we were all seated in the giant auditorium waiting for Mr. Tushman to give his middle school address. The auditorium was even bigger than I imagined it would be, bigger than even the one at Vaya's school. I looked around and there must have been 1 million people in the audience. Okay, maybe not 1 million, but definitely a lot. Thank you, Headmaster Jansen, for those very kind words of introduction, said Mr. Tushman, standing behind the podium on the stage as he talked into the microphone. Welcome, my fellow teachers and members of the faculty. Welcome, parents and grandparents, friends and honored guests, and most especially welcome to my 5th and 6th grade students. Welcome to Beecher Prep Middle School graduation ceremonies. Everyone applauded. Every year, Mr. Tushman continued, reading from his notes with his reading glasses way down the tip of his nose, I am charged with writing 2 commencement addresses, one for 5th and 6th grade graduation ceremony today, and one for the 7th and 8th grade ceremony that will take place tomorrow. And every year I say to myself, let's cut down on my work and write just one address that I can use for both situations. Seems like it shouldn't be such a hard thing to do, right? And yet each year I end up with 2 different speeches, no matter what my intentions. And I finally figured out this year. It's not as you might assume, simply because tomorrow I'll be talking to an older crowd with a middle school experience that is largely behind them, whereas your middle school experience is largely in front of you. No, I think it has to do more with this particular age that you are right now, this particular moment in your lives that even after 20 years of being around this age still moves me. Because you're at the cusp, kids. You're at the edge between childhood and everything that comes after. You're in a transition. We're all gathered here together, Mr. Tushman continued, taking his glasses off and then using them to point at us in the audience. All your families, friends, and teachers to celebrate not only your achievements of this past year, Beecher Middle Schoolers, but your endless possibilities. When you reflect on the past year, I want you all to look back at where you are now and where you've been. You've all gotten a little taller, a little stronger, a little smarter, I hope. Here's some people in the audience chuckled. But the best way to measure how you've grown isn't by inches or by the number of laps you can now run around the track, or even your grade point average, though those things are important to be sure. It's what you've done with your time, how you've chosen to spend your days, and whom you have touched this year. To me, that's the greatest measure of success. There's this wonderful line in a book by J.M. Barrie, and no, it's not Peter Pan, and no, I'm not going to ask you to clap if you believe in fairies. Here, everyone laughed again. But in another book by J.M. Barrie called The Little White Bird, he writes, he started flipping through a small book on the podium and found the page he was looking for, and then put his reading glasses on. Shall we make a new rule of life? Always try to be a little kinder than is necessary. Here, Mr. Tushman looked up at the audience. Kinder than is necessary, he repeated. What a marvelous line, isn't it? Kinder than is necessary. Because it's not enough to be kind. One should be kinder than needed. Why, I love that line. That concept is that reminds me that we carry with us as human beings not just a capacity to be kind, but the very choice of kindness. And what does that mean? How is that measured? You can't use a yardstick. It's like I was saying before. It's not like measuring how much you've grown in a year. It's not exactly quantifiable, is it? How do we know we've been kind? What is being kind anyway? He put on his reading glasses again and started flipping through another small book. There's another passage in a different book I'd like to share with you, he said, if you'll bear with me while I find it. Here we go. In Under the Eye of the Clock by Christopher Nolan, the main character is a young man who is facing some extraordinary challenges. There's this one part where a kid helps him, a kid in his class. On the surface, it's a very small gesture, but to this young man, whose name is Joseph, it's, well, if you'll permit me. He cleared his throat and read from the book. It was the moments such as these that Joseph recognized the face of God in human form. It glimmered in their kindness to him. It glowed in their keenness. It hinted in their caring. Indeed, it caressed in their gaze. He paused and took off his glasses again. It glimmered in their kindness to him, he repeated, smiling. Such a simple thing, kindness. Such a simple thing. A nice word of encouragement given when needed, an act of friendship, a passing smile. He closed the book, put it down, and leaned forward on the podium. Children, what I want to impart to you today is an understanding of the value of that simple thing called kindness. And that's all I want to leave you with today. I know I'm kind of infamous for my verbosity. Here, everyone laughed again. I guess he knew he was known for his long speeches. But what I want you, my students, to take away from your middle school experience, he continued, is the sure knowledge that in the future you make for yourselves, anything is possible. If every single person in this room made it a rule, wherever you are, whenever you can, you will try to act a little kinder than is necessary, the world really would be a better place. And if you do this, if you act just a little kinder than is necessary, someone else, somewhere, someday, may recognize in you, in every single one of you, the face of God. He paused and shrugged. Or whatever politically correct spiritual representation of a universal goodness you happen to believe in, he added quickly, smiling, which got a lot of laughs and loads of applause, especially from the back of the auditorium, where the parents were sitting. We're going to pause on this chapter, and I'm going to stop the video here in a second, but I want you to think about that. Think about that in your lives. Okay, let me find it. Let's see. Shall we make a new rule of life? Always try to be a little kinder than is necessary. Always. I think the number one rule of life, the number one rule in my room, I've told you this from the beginning, is use kind words. Always try to be a little kinder than is necessary.